Rise Up, Chapter 2, Writers of Berk. When destiny calls, the chosen have no choice. Honey Lemon found herself laying in the dirt. She pushed herself up with a groan. Her head ached. A groan nearby warned her of someone else's presence, but when she looked, she only saw Dash. Dash? Honey's head was spinning. What are you doing here? Dash pushed himself up. His head spun as he coughed up some dirt. I don't know, he replied, rubbing his temple. Looking around, he continued, Where is here? Honey scanned the area again. There were trees all around, and no signs of the portal that had brought him there. She noticed a few buildings through a small break in the trees. A small town or village, maybe? I'm not sure, but I think I know where we can get our answer. She got to her feet shakily and went over to help Dash to his feet. Once they were both standing and sure of their mobility, they started toward the buildings Honey had seen. Dash wanted to run ahead and check it out at one point. He insisted that he could be there and back before anyone noticed, but in turn she insisted they should stay together. He reluctantly agreed. At first they felt a little awkward. They were getting some weird looks from the people they were questioning, but no one was acting hostile. They had found out that they were in a village on an island called Berk. All around them were signs that some bigger creature lived there as well, but they hadn't yet run into any of these yet. Finally, they made it onto a path there in the village. I don't think anyone's seen anything, Honey sighed. She and Dash had found a nice place to sit on the edge of the path. Honey had her chin cupped in her hands. Dash was about to reply when someone else spoke. No, but I don't think they'd say anything if they had. The two jumped and looked up. Standing over them was a tall woman with reddish-brown hair. She had a leathery coat on with a fur skirt. Her arms were crossed. Next to her was a blonde girl. Her hair was in a braid and thrown over her left shoulder. She wore fur boots and fingerless gloves made of fur. Opposite the blonde was a man. He had brown hair and blackish-blue tattoos on his chin. On his lower arms were some leather gauntlets with fur lining around the upper and lower openings. Now, if you'd be so kind as to tell us who you are and why you're here. The blonde stepped forward. She pulled a battle axe from her back and hit the shaft against her open palm in a threatening gesture. Honey became nervous. She waved her hands in front of herself. No, 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 you've got it all wrong. She took a deep breath to calm herself. We're here looking for our friends. My name is Honey Lemon, and this is Dash Parr. Your friends? The woman placed a reassuring hand on the girl's upper arm and pushed past her, but in a gentle way. They locked eyes for a second, and she gave the girl a nod. Then she faced Honey and Dash. Friends? Yes. They would have been in some sort of vehicle, like a strange vehicle, like something that flies. Honey wasn't sure how to explain it. Clearly there were no cars on this island, which meant they had succeeded in going backwards in time, but it caused them a lot of problems. Dash gave her a weird look. Her descriptions could use some work. He noticed the man now. While Honey was trying to describe whatever she was trying to describe, the man looked like he thought of something. Do you know something? Dash asked. When it came to his sister, he wasn't playing around. If that meant being a little rude, so be it. Honey and the other two looked at him and then followed his eyes to the man. Eret? The woman asked. Eret, the man, nodded. I saw something strange while we were out looking for the chief. It looked like it had crashed. Honey and Dash exchanged an excited look. They now had a location on their friends. Well, they hoped. We still don't know what happened to Hiccup. The girl was holding a hushed conversation with the woman. She motioned to Dash and Honey. We can't just trust them. What if they had something to do with his disappearance and want to get you away too? We need a leader, Valka. Fine, Valka snapped. Fine. She took a deep breath and calmed herself. You and Eric take them to investigate the crash, Astrid. I'll stay here in case Hiccup returns. Astrid nodded. Okay. Don't forget, Snotlout and the others are out searching for him as well. Astrid put her hand on Valka's shoulder. We'll find him. Dash snorted. Snotlout. That was a funny name. Astrid's head snapped over to look at the boy. Dash froze. Honey put her hands on Dash's shoulders and pulled him back a little with an awkward smile. He didn't mean anything. I can take care of myself. Dash insisted quietly. She has an axe, Honey reminded him. Eret stood silently, watching. He looked to Astrid and Valka, then back to Honey and Dash. After examining them for a moment, he turned his eyes to the sky. It was sometime just after noon, from the sun's position. We might want to get going. It was about an hour's flight from Berk. Astrid sighed. She placed her battle axe on her back once more. They're going to need dragons. At first, Honey and Dash weren't sure they had heard correctly. Dragons? Like real-life dragons? But they soon found themselves staring up at a dragon. He was gray and brown. He sort of resembled an owl, now that they thought about it, and he was just as interested in them as they were in him. This is Cloudjumper, Valka said, resting her hand on Cloudjumper's chest. He's my dragon, but since I'm staying here, you will be riding him. Cloudjumper is quite tame, so there shouldn't be any trouble. Plus, Eret and Astrid are going along with you. Nearby, Eret was saddling a red and green dragon that looked like a rhinoceros with wings. Astrid's dragon, a blue and tan, two-legged dragon with a horn on its nose, was already saddled. Apparently, she had just returned from a searching mission a few moments before the two kids ran into them. Valka saw the looks on their faces as they stared up at Cloudjumper. I hope you two don't mind sharing. When their looks didn't change, she continued, I'm sure we could find another dragon tame enough for one of you. It's a real dragon, Dash said in awe. Honey just nodded. Neither of them were paying attention to Valka. As far as they knew, she wasn't even there anymore. Cloudjumper and Valka exchanged a look. Astrid came over with her dragon following close behind. All right, are you two ready to go? Honey broke her eyes away from Cloudjumper. When she saw Astrid's dragon, her eyes lit up. Oh, beautiful! She went around Astrid and reached out to the dragon. At first the dragon was a little skittish, but it sniffed her and then nuzzled into her chest. Honey let out a laugh when it first nuzzled up to her. Astrid raised her eyebrow. How would you feel riding Stormfly with me? She motioned to Dash, who was still captivated by Cloudjumper, and continued, Your friend could ride Cloudjumper. I'd say he could go with Eret on Skullcrusher, but he's still learning to fly himself. I know how to fly, Eret called over from where he stood with Skullcrusher. Honey laughed. This reminded her of Wasabi and his, It was just one time, guys, one time. Of course, this was in reference to his nickname instead of an actual skill. Stormfly? She asked, ignoring Eret's reply. That's my dragon's name. Astrid patted Stormfly's shoulder. She's a deadly natter. Aw, it's a she? Honey rubbed her hand along Stormfly's scales. She's beautiful. Her eye caught a view of Dash, still staring in awe at Cloudjumper. That sounds like a very kind offer, but I should probably ride Cloudjumper with Dash. Upon hearing his name, Dash turned to Honey and pointed at Cloudjumper once more. It's a dragon! Wait until Mom and Dad and Violet hear that I rode a real-life dragon! Skullcrusher hobbled over with Eret already situated in the saddle. Are we ready? Valka moved her hand into Cloudjumper's view before bringing it down. Cloudjumper followed the motion, laying down so that his back was easily accessible. Then the temporary chiefess looked at Dash. Up you go now. Dash's face lit up even more. This is so cool! He went over to where Valka stood. With Valka's help, he was soon sitting on Cloudjumper's back. Then Valka looked to Honeylemon. Your turn. Honey gave Stormfly a final hug before going over to Valka. She mounted Cloudjumper, ending up behind Dash. Astrid grabbed Stormfly's saddle and hoisted herself up. Once she was positioned, she nodded to Eret. All right, I think we're ready. Now don't worry about a thing, Valka assured Honey and Dash. Cloudjumper is tame enough. He knows what to do, and you're riding with two experienced riders, so you'll be safe. Just do as Astrid and Eret say. After her advice was given, Valka backed away from Cloudjumper. I'd hold on if I were you two, Astrid instructed. Stormfly's wings spread out. 1 beat, 2 beats. She was off. Skullcrusher followed suit only moments later. Then it was Cloudjumper's turn. Stormfly and Skullcrusher hovered in the air above them, waiting. Dash pressed his legs tighter against the dragon's neck and tried to hold on to something, but there wasn't really anything to hold on to. Honey followed suit, except she held on to Dash's shoulders. Cloudjumper's wings spread out behind them. Of course, the new riders couldn't resist a look at the magnificent wingspan. They didn't expect to find 4 wings, though. Dash's eyes darted to what he could see of Honeylemon to see if she saw what he did. She did. But now wasn't the time for them to be awestruck. Cloudjumper's wings pushed down through the air and came back up, sending a gust of wind up. Then they did it again. And once more. Now they were in the air. He continued to ascend steadily until they were on the same level with the other dragons. Honey and Dash held on as tight as they could, but they felt off balance. Not like the kind of off balance you get when you're riding a horse. Rather the kind you get when you're on a zip line or a plane for the first time. It was slow going with the 2 new riders, but within 2 hours they located the crashed device. It was hard to miss. Trees were toppled over and there was a crater that followed the trajectory of the crash. Smoke rose from the boomerang-like vehicle. Eric pointed at it as they all hovered nearby. There it is. What is it? Astrid asked, squinting to see it better, but not daring to get closer. It's a time machine. Honey smiled smugly. Even Dash was surprised by this. A time machine? What's a time machine? Eric raised his eyebrow. Honey rubbed her hand along Cloudjumper's side. Come on, boy, take us down. Cloudjumper looked over his shoulder at her. There was a low rumble in his throat as he started to descend. Where are you going? Astrid yelled after her. She growled to herself in frustration. Then she urged Stormfly to follow them down. Come on, girl, let's go. Eric watched them. He scanned the area around the crash. Something must have made it crash. He didn't believe that it would just crash on its own. Not even a dragon would do that, unless it was stupid. A small flash of a shadow caught his eye. Something seemed to be moving on the ground. A dragon, perhaps? He shook his head. He was probably just seeing things. Come on, Skullcrusher, Eric said, patting the dragon's neck. Skullcrusher released a moan as he started to go up, then dove down after their friends. On the ground, Honey and Dash had already dismounted Cloudjumper. Astrid slid down from Stormfly's back. The 2 dragons started sniffing the machine. It looks like this thing got totaled. Astrid placed her hand on the red and white metal. She pulled it away quickly. It's still hot. Violet! Dash yelled. He turned around and cupped his hands around his mouth. Violet, where are you? Skullcrusher and Eric landed heavily. As Eric slid down, he spoke. I don't think that's wise. Astrid nodded. He's right. There are all sorts of dragons around here, and we don't know if you'll attract the nice ones or not. Over here! Honeylemon's call distracted them. Dash darted over to where she was. Astrid and Eric blinked. Had they seen right? They jogged to Honey and Dash. The blonde was kneeling next to a black-haired woman. The woman was unconscious and was wearing a dress with a black top and a black and white lined skirt. She had smudges of smoke and dirt on her face, but otherwise she seemed all right. Nearby was a circular, clear container with a hamster inside. Dash grabbed the hamster and held him out. It's Rhino! He held the container and hamster out to Honeylemon. It's Rhino! I see that, Honey replied excitedly. Then she returned her attention to the unconscious woman. I don't recognize her. Eric approached Dash. He looked at the contained hamster, confused. What is this some sort of magic? He poked the clear ball gently. No, it's plastic. Dash gave him a strange look. Who didn't know what plastic was? Astrid grabbed one of the woman's arms and started to pull her up. Come on, let's get them back to Berk. Maybe they'll know something about all of our friends. The woman started to wake as they moved her. Her left hand came up to her head. She was still a little groggy, but she was awake. An eye opened, then the other. Where? Honey grabbed her hand and cradled it between her own. Are you okay? What happened? I'm fine, just a little woozy. Who are you? My name's Honeylemon. I've heard that name before. What's your name? Franny Robinson. Robinson? Dash's head snapped to look in their direction. Like Wilbur Robinson? Yes, that's my son. As Franny started to regain knowledge of her surroundings, she realized that there were 4 strangers around her. And of course Rhino was there. Wait, where's Wilbur? We're not sure. Astrid let Franny pull her arm away. You two were the only ones here. Inside his little hamster ball, Rhino squeaked. His little nose twitched. Franny held her hands out to Dash. Here, let me have him. At first Dash wasn't too sure, but if she was Wilbur's mother, she mustn't be that bad. He held Rhino's ball out toward Franny. She reached out to take him. Before she was able to, however, Cloudjumper, Stormfly, and Skullcrusher started acting weird. Then something black jumped out of the bushes and grabbed the ball from Dash's hands. It was gone a second later. Rhino! Franny, Honey, and Dash yelled after the hamster. Come on, Stormfly! Astrid ran over and jumped onto Stormfly's back. Let's go! Franny now noticed the dragons in their midst. She was speechless. Her mouth hung open and she tried to speak, but nothing would come out. I know, right? Dash asked. Honey ran to Cloudjumper, who was already kneeling. Now's not the time. Come on, Dash, we have to go after Rhino. Right. Dash ran over and jumped onto Cloudjumper's back. Once he was aboard, the dragon lifted off into the sky after Astrid and Stormfly. Where are you going? Franny called after them. Eret was already on Skullcrusher's back. He moved Skullcrusher over to Franny's side and held his hand down to her. They're going after your Rhino. Let's follow them. She was reluctant at first. Her hand hesitated. This was a stranger. On a dragon. But Rhino was in danger. Franny took Eret's hand. He pulled her up onto Skullcrusher's back behind him. Hold on tight. Franny wrapped her arms around him. Skullcrusher squatted and stretched out his wings. They were there for a second, then they were off. How are you guys so fast? Astrid asked as she slid down from Stormfly's back, always a step behind Honey and Dash. It's not us, Honey said. We keep almost falling off. She laughed. Dash mumbled something. He didn't want to admit that he was bad at something. Cloudjumper let out a rumble as he looked at the cave entrance. They had followed the dragon and Rhino here. Now there was only one thing to do. Go in and get Rhino. Astrid grabbed her axe. All right, let's go. Honey looked around for Eret and Franny. What about... They'll catch up when they get here. The Viking headed into the cave. Dash and Honey took one last look around before following her in. The dragon stalked in behind them. Eret saw Cloudjumper's tail disappear into the cave below as they flew over. He pushed down slightly on Skullcrusher's back. Down, Skullcrusher. The dragon started to descend. Franny looked down at the ground. I don't see anyone. Why are we landing here? They went into the cave, Eret pointed out. She nodded. Once they were on the ground, he slid down. Eret turned to the woman and helped her down. Thank you. He nodded. A cry from inside made them charge in. Skullcrusher ran on ahead, having the bigger bulk, and Eret and Franny followed him. But they didn't expect what they found when they arrived. Dash had hold of Rhino's ball. The hamster looked like he had been scared to death. Astrid stood with her hands above her head, her axe still firmly in place, as if she were ready to strike. Stormfly and Cloudjumper were tilting their heads curiously. And Honey, she was using baby talk to coo at the dragon that had stolen Rhino. Franny gave a smile with a small sigh of relief. Eret pointed at the dragon haltingly. Is that? Rolling on the ground in front of Honeylemon was a long black dragon. It had slick black scales and green eyes peeled open every once in a while. It was letting out purrs of delight, along with little trills. Rolling on the ground in front of Honeylemon was a night fury. End of chapter 2.